My name is Lindsay Brown. I'm a senior research scientist at New York University at a center called Global TIES for Children that focuses on improving outcomes for children in areas of conflict and crisis. And I've also been a teacher in the US and abroad, and I studied research-based ways of supporting teachers for my PhD. And through my work with teachers in contexts in both the US and internationally, I have developed an evidence-based approach to working with teachers called BETTER, which stands for Building Expert Teachers Through Evidence-Based Research. I was finding myself to be part of projects where we wanted teachers to implement programs or interventions where we weren't really appropriately taking their current level of practice into account. Teachers in low resource contexts sometimes have zero formal teacher training, and other times the training that they've had is entirely theoretical. So they may have read about teaching and been lectured about teaching, but they haven't actually taught with students in either a simulated or a real environment. And beyond that, we were often building their capacity to implement a specific curricula or activities that later shifted because of changing policies or changing politicians. And whatever they had learned as part of that prior training didn't necessarily transfer to whatever the new curriculum was. And I wanted to think about an approach that would impart foundational practices that would endure over time. BETTER is a flexible approach that works with teachers or teacher leaders that builds on a body of work called core or foundational practices. And these are practices that we would expect teachers to use every day across grade levels and subject areas. So, for example, facilitating classroom discourse would be considered a foundational practice. English teachers might be using it to have a text-based discussion, or science teachers might be using it for argumentation, but we would expect to see it in both places. There are often common practices that education systems will identify as being priorities, but there is no one definitive list. And because of this, the first step of the approach is to actually generate a list or a framework of practices that stakeholders consider to be the most relevant for their context. And some contexts where we've worked have this list already, and if not, then we work with ministries or teacher leaders to generate one. And after we have that list, our next step is to prioritize a set of practices that we consider to be particularly high leverage. And these are practices where our best evidence suggests that the teacher doing that thing either more frequently or with higher levels of quality results in more student learning. And also where we believe teachers have growth to make in that area. So if we think about classroom discourse, particularly things like asking thought-provoking questions or incorporating student ideas and perspectives, this can be leveraged in different ways, like to improve classroom culture or to increase the intellectual rigor in the classroom. There are two main components to encourage teacher growth. So the first is this idea of explicitness, or really breaking down the teacher practice into pieces and naming those pieces with a common language that we can all use to understand in the same way, and showing different ways the practice can look and showing what that practice looks like at different quality levels. So too often we only give teachers a concept of what that practice is, but we don't spend enough time really showing them what it looks like in the classroom and letting them practice it. And the second component is partnership. So first we partner with teacher leaders to understand the teacher's context and their curriculum and their current practice levels so that the approach is relevant. And second, we provide structures and spaces for teachers or teacher leaders to collaborate and support one another as they learn these new practices. Our goal now is to produce more evidence of Better's effectiveness in producing change in teacher practice, which is primarily done through research grants. So, if ministries or NGOs or school systems in low resource contexts are excited about this approach and being a part of research, they would really make great partners for us.